Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully everyone can hear very well at the back. Hands up, you can hear? One hand? Great. Thank you very much. Participation is key in this conference, so thanks for that early show of teamwork there. Welcome to session one of a very packed programme over the next couple of days. We're going to be addressing in this session some of the broader issues that we're going to be delving into in a more granular detail across the following sessions. As we hit this pretty grim milestone of 600 days of war in Sudan, with the catastrophic humanitarian situation worse than ever, I'm Rebecca Kesby, I'm moderating this session. I'm just a journalist, so no expert intel from me, but I'm just here to facilitate our fantastic panel. We will be taking questions and comments towards the end of this session, so do think up some good ones. And we are encouraging people to participate in all the sessions, but also in the chats and the coffee breaks, the lunches and things that are going on, because we want people talking to each other and getting involved. First, though, let's hear from our fantastic panel that we've got together for you. We have Nisreen Elsaim with us. Give us a wave. Sudanese activist, special interest in climate issues, youth participation in Sudan as well. His Excellency Kamal Gubara here is the ambassador of Sudan to Kenya, of course, as many of you will know, and also permanent representative of Sudan to the UN as well. Dr. Mamadou Dian Balde joins us from the UNHCR. We can see him there on the screen, currently in Rwanda, I think. Mamadou, thank you very much for being with us virtually and in spirit. He is the Regional Director for East and the Horn of Africa, the Great Lakes, and the Regional Refugee Coordinator for Sudan for the UNHCR. And on the end, Dr. Ayla Bonfilio, who's the Regional Head of East and Southern Africa, Egypt and Yemen for the Mixed Migration Centre. Welcome to everybody. And Ayla, first of all, I mean, you brought everybody together for this conference. Can you tell us what your ambitions are for the next couple of days, what you want to see come out of this?
Thanks very much, Rebecca, for the kind introduction. And I want to thank everyone who's in the room today. And also thanks for your generosity as we figure out some of the kinks with the signs, and maybe we can have the sound reduced in the back. I want to also thank UNHCR, who've been planning this conference with us over the last few months, and also Danita, who's been a big supporter of this conference. I know a lot of you have traveled outside of Nairobi to come here. And for us, I mean, seeing the 600-day mark come up and realizing in that time, Sudan has become the largest displacement crisis in the world. I mean, that's been really the primary motivator for us to organize this event. And we felt that it was crucial to take stock at this moment, to really reflect on the state of the art. You know, what are the displacement and migration patterns that we're seeing on the ground and in neighboring countries across the region? What are the persisting barriers to protection and assistance? And what are we missing? What are the blind spots? What are we not looking at? And what do we need to collectively, all of us in the room who are working on Sudan in some shape or form, what do we have to collectively prepare for? So the panels over the next 2 days, the way we've designed this conference, is really to examine some of these key priorities that we see on the ground and what you have identified as key priorities, because don't forget that much of this conference has been built by you through your submissions with the call for papers, through sharing your work. And so we have panels on the targeting of women in this conflict and children, on the policy landscape, on how do we design large-scale responses to meet the needs of Sudan. And our ambition through this program is to really bring together these key insights, but also recommendations for policy, for programming, and pull it into a roadmap that's going to guide our work over the next 12 months. So, I mean, with that being said, I strongly invite everyone, please ask questions, share your work, raise your key priorities, and think through with us how do we get there? Because that's really going to make this conference worthwhile and not just a presentation conference.
I don't know if this is working yet. No. Okay. Sharing of the mic. Thank you. So, Nisreen, we know now that 11 million people have been displaced by this conflict. That's about 30% of the population. And the statistics are really frightening. More than half are women, more than a quarter, just about a quarter, are under 5 years old. What kind of impact is all of this, the conflict, having on younger generations in particular and their development?
Thank you very much for this question. I think if you want to talk about migration in general, specifically with a deep focus on Sudan, then we need to know that this aspiration for movement is not new. Now it's forced, of course, by the war, but there was many factors that forced people to migrate and also move even before the war. I remember in 2018 we did a study where more than 1,500 young people participated in, and the main idea was to see the dynamics on to which extent young people can actually go to find what I call hope or possibilities. And the survey had many questions, but the one that really shocked us was, so we started with a statement: do you think you will still cross the Mediterranean illegally to Europe, even if you know that there is a 50% chance they will not make it to the other side? And we went up until we reached 90%. And when we reached 90%, still 84% of the young people who responded to the survey said yes, they will cross the Mediterranean illegally to Europe, even if there is 90% chance they will not make it to the other side. And for me, it means that they didn't have even 11% reasons to stay. Because if you have even 1% more reason to stay in your country, you will not do this suicidal, from my perspective, behavior. And then during the conflict, of course, even in the very first months, we did another survey to see what are the priorities of young people. And someone will think peace, someone will think food, but actually the priority was education. So young people were really anxious and worried about not continuing their education, especially that the education processes in Sudan was not stable for a while. 2018, 2019 was the revolution, 2020 was the COVID, 2021 was the coup, and then the only year that was relatively stable was 2020, 2021 was the coup, and then 2022 was the only year that was relatively stable. And then, of course, in 2023, the war happened. So it's been a while. It's not something new that the education is not really in place. I think some people had to spend 8 years just to finish their bachelor degree, and they feel that the whole world is moving and that they are standing in their one place without being able to move. I don't want to say take it long. The idea of looking at the migration patterns for young people and how is the current conflict is impacting them is not really separated from what was happening before the conflict, and definitely will not be separated from the rebuild or relief processes that hopefully will happen post-conflict.
Okay. So just listening to that, Ambassador, I wonder what your concerns are, given the huge displacement of people within the country and also increasingly leaving the country altogether. What are your concerns for the sort of long-term impact for Sudan with that?
Thank you very much, Moderator, Ms. Rebecca. In the beginning, allow me to thank the Mixed Migration Center, the Danish Refugee Council, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees for organizing this conference about my country, Sudan. In the beginning, I would like to set some important pillars. I think they will pave the way for interactive discussion in this conference. So these important pillars about the conflict in Sudan itself, which will, in a way, show us the mixed movements, how the trends of them, and what is the concerns, your question about that. I think let me start by number one, more than, as our daughter said, 11 million people have been forcibly displaced. But by whom? By the militia of the RSF since April 15, 2023, including over 8.1 million internally displaced people, and 2.9 million to neighboring countries. Number two, I can say the militia of the RSF is the cause of the current humanitarian crisis in Sudan. I am saying that so to let the discussion be interactive, if there is other opinion also to be raised. They did and continue doing killings, sexual violence, destruction of properties, looting of banks, institutions, organizations, embassies, real estates, and others, and forced deportations of people from their houses, villages, and towns. And this is reflect on many people now represented here coming from other countries as refugees. And that is the result of some acts done in Sudan. The RSF militia is supported by some countries, everybody in the room knows, United Arab Emirates and Chad. This is direct support. And other countries, indirect support, which are secretly but known for many. So the mixed movement strengths related to the Sudan, we can see that forced displaced people internally and refugees. Of course, there are many crimes done during these acts, summary executions. That is, example for it is in East Al Jazeera, ethnic cleansing in West Darfur, sexual violence, this is widespread, targeting civilians, including women, children, and community leaders. And also one of the pillars, foreign fighters and mercenaries are part of the RSF. So this is the base of what happened in Sudan, in my opinion, and in many opinion of many Sudanese people and foreigners and journalists after doing research and investigation about what is going on. It is really sad to talk about the difficulties that faced by all of us, Sudanese, and others who love Sudan, and we don't feel this is the right way. And let us, through this conference and other conferences, to see the way out of it. I think without stopping in a way or another the support for the militias, those who are working as countries, representing countries and so on, there should be an effort to stop the support for these militias, which cause those big crimes in Sudan. How to do that? It is not easy, we know. But hopefully, with the recommendations of this conference, we can reach some points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Really important points there, and I hope we'll come back to address some of those specifically as well later. I just want to bring in Mamadou, who joins us live from Rwanda. Thank you so much for coming on, Mamadou. We're now at this awful mark of 600 days, as the ambassador was saying. The conflict's still going on. The humanitarian situation started badly, but it just seems to get more and more catastrophic. And there's been a recent spike again in the migration of people leaving and being displaced internally in Sudan. Can you get us up to date with the current situation in terms of the movement of people?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Rebecca. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay. crisis that we have witnessed recently, and it's not only for the region, but also globally. As you said, I'm on my way between Kigali and Mahama refugee camp here in Rwanda, where even though the majority of refugees are not Sudanese, we have a proportion of Sudanese refugees. And this is to tell you that the Sudan phenomenon, the 3.1 million people who have been displaced, is not only staying at neighboring countries, and we are seeing including here in Rwanda. Perhaps just few thoughts I wanted to share and highlight with you on approaching this 600th day. The situation and the magnitude of the protection crisis is that 1 in 4 Sudanese people today are forcibly displaced. 1 in 4 Sudanese people. That's not including the people who were hosted generously within Sudan prior to the crisis. Until today, you have refugees who are hundreds of thousands of refugees also hosted within Sudan who have been displaced. So 1 in 4 Sudanese people are forcibly displaced, and globally 1 in 6 forcibly displaced persons are from Sudan. So this is to tell you the magnitude of the problem of this protection crisis. Now, what is it that we need to also highlight? And I know that we'll be discussing data in the next panels, is the fact that you have 700,000 people who have gone back to South Sudan, who have gone back to Ethiopia, who were nationals hosted, generously hosted by Sudan as a very, very as a very progressive refugee hosting country. So it's the Sudanese, it's people who were hosted in Sudan, and this, as you rightly said, is continuing. It is continuing. It is continuing. When you compare the Sudan situation and the number of refugees it has produced in only 600 days, we have never seen something like this, and that's a very, very important element that we need to highlight. A second point I wanted to highlight, Rebecca, is the profile of the people. This time, and this is going to be extremely important as we look at mixed movement, it's not necessarily people who are in rural areas. It's the heart of the Sudan, the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, it's the middle class, and it's the educated Sudanese who have been forced to flee the country. And they are found in Egypt, where I saw several of them a few weeks ago, in South Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Chad, as well as in places that are beyond neighboring countries, like in Uganda, in Rwanda here, and more will be sadly moving forward if we do not address comprehensively this mixed movement. So in a nutshell, a very sad milestone, a very important protection crisis that require much bigger effort from everyone to tackle. And thirdly, we should not think that this is a movement that may be contained if we do not address the real issues, peace, ceasefire, and addressing issues such as risk of trafficking. Back to you, Rebecca.
Mamadou, thank you so much. There's really, really interesting points there, really important ones. I wonder if we could pick up with some of that with Isla. Mamadou there saying about the sort of people who are leaving and also the unprecedented scale of the displacement. You've been collecting, your team, lots of data in terms of what we know. Can you update us on some of your findings?
Team building. So without preempting the next panel, I want to highlight some of the more, let's say we can call them trends or issues that are really coming out strongly through the data. The first is how absolutely crucial it is that we maintain access to asylum, access to territories and neighboring countries as people try and flee, be they Sudanese or third country nationals. We see that sometimes states have an interest in managing their borders, and some are introducing restrictions. And the unintended consequence of that is that it's in some cases incentivizing the use of smugglers to cross those borders, which opens up a whole host of problems in relation to sometimes the abuses that people face at the hands of their smugglers, or the fact that this then pushes people into irregularity where they should have access to asylum. And so I think it's one key thing that we should keep our eyes on is how smuggling dynamics are going to transform in the face of this conflict, something that will be explored later in session 6. The other striking thing that Mamadou is suggesting is just the sheer variety of mixed movement trends or dynamics that we're seeing from this conflict. It's not just cross-border movement, but unprecedented internal displacement. I mean, each one of Sudan's neighbors is receiving returnees, if we can call them that, because some have no context for living in, for instance, South Sudan, or refugees, but also third country nationals. And crucially, we also see that maybe what's more difficult to talk about as a migration outcome is immobility. How many people are too poor, or they're trapped in areas of active fighting, and so they cannot move? How do we assist those? And so, all of these different dynamics we are seeing play out, and it's crucial that we pay attention to and program for all of them. And how do we make, for those who are able to cross borders, their journeys safer? How do we facilitate them and not, unwillingly really focus on those kinds of journeys that might be going north or going further afield? Then I think another key aspect coming through the data is just the scale of protection needs. It's been said already by my co-panelists, but unprecedented sexual violence, kidnapping. We are seeing with the people that we are interviewing in Chad, in Ethiopia, within Sudan, in South Sudan, we're seeing it come through in case management data within Egypt, but also Libya. People are arriving having experienced very extreme abuses. And I think our panel number 4 is going to delve into that, but I expect that to be a huge theme over the next few days. In terms of the perpetrators of these incidents, it's across the board. The data are showing that this is happening at the hands of not just smugglers, but all armed actors in the country. So I think this is also something that's really based in evidence. So I'll just stop there with those 3.
If I might steal the mic a little bit. I think one of the very important groups and categories that we sometimes overlook because they don't really have a specific classification are people who migrated but not necessarily refugees. In the previous year and a half almost, more than 500,000, I think it depends on what statistic you are taking, but between 300 and 500,000 people migrated from Sudan to other countries. I call it migration because they paid for their ticket, for example, they paid for buying a residency permit somewhere, but they are not necessarily working, they don't necessarily have a source of income, their kids don't necessarily able to go to school, so they are not really normal migrants who are working and producing. At the same time, they are not refugees who are registered within the UNHCR or anything like that. So I think these people are because they are between categories, normally they don't really have enough attention, but being in the Gulf countries, seeing these people and how much they suffer, I think we really need to pay a lot of attention to them.
Good point. I just want to go back to, because we're talking about mixed migration, obviously, but on the subject of refugees, Mamadou, could you tell us a little bit more about these huge refugee camps? Because obviously a lot of people here are involved in aid agencies trying to get relief and respond to this massive crisis. Can you outline some of the challenges that there have been in getting aid to the people who are the most desperate? Because the statistics, again, are horrific in terms of the number of people dependent on food aid and even facing starvation as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Perhaps few thoughts. The first one is that, and Ayla said it, is the access to asylum. Access to asylum is fundamental. Sudan has been receiving refugees. By the conflict, we had close to 1 million refugees inside Sudan, not for 1 year, not for 10 years, some of them for 20 years. So I think access to asylum is not only the right thing to do for Sudanese, but also, Sudan has been a beacon of protection for many people for decades and decades and decades. So we've been partnering with immediate refugee hosting countries, immediate neighbors to Sudan, to ensure access to asylum. Initially, as the numbers were starting as people were leaving, we had very progressive policies. And then as numbers continue to grow, sadly, we have seen restrictions that we are trying to address with concerned government. And I think that's one part. So access to asylum, fundamental access to protection, and no barriers to asylum needs to be the way forward. And that, I think, is an important message I wanted to pass. Because you have the restrictions, and what we are going to see is increase in the number of trafficking. The suffering is going to get extremely high, and I don't think that they will serve anyone. Number two is for people who have been received outside Sudan. We need the continuous support of the international community to help the refugees live dignified lives. As Nisreen mentioned, it's not every single person who have left Sudan who got registered as a refugee. Sometimes it's better protection systems that already existed. Others, it's greater level of vulnerability. So we need that registration whenever possible and to the best interest of the individuals and to help them live more dignified lives. What we have seen is that several refugees, sections of the refugees, what they need is an identity document, access to livelihoods opportunities, to education, and we need to serve them while also having the support. As a regional refugee coordinator, I work with 86 partners in 2024 that is ending. Mostly a third of them being national NGOs, others are UN organizations, international NGOs, most of them in the room. So the coordination of these 86 partners has been extremely helpful to support refugees, and as well as some, but we realize that it's not sufficient. We have seen great support from donors, but it's still at 30% of the regional refugee response plan. If you can imagine, for needs of 100%, you are only funded at 30%. You can imagine that we'll not have the cash to be able to support the Sudanese sisters, mothers of 4 or 5 in Cairo. We will not be having the possibility of helping the families who have just moved to Chad, and we have 200,000 of them at the border areas. So we will not be able to help the young students that I saw at the borders between South Sudan and Sudan in rank, and the only thing they need is a scholarship so that they can finish their studies or help the striving business people in Kampala. So we need to support them, and also to recognize that humanitarian responses are not enough. They are fundamental. On 17th of September this year in Nairobi, we organized a meeting when we brought in development actors, and we asked them, please come and complement the life-saving work protection services we are delivering. So helping refugees live dignified lives and asking development partners. 2 more points and I will stop. I think what is also quite important is that, we need to comprehensively address the drivers of onward movement. Looking at this from a very, security lenses will not help. Yes, there are risks of instability in the region, so we need to make sure that we are addressing these drivers in a more comprehensive way, using the roots-based approach and the work that we are already doing with MMC and several partners, including regional economic commissions.
Okay.
Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mamadou. I just want to put a couple of those points with time marches on, and we do want to take some questions and comments. But Ambassador, I wanted to just pick up on something Mamadou there said about the funding and the international help, because a lot has been pledged, not all of it has arrived, that has happened before. I wonder what your concerns are about that. And then one of the other things that we hear from aid organizations saying that they've faced challenges with bureaucracy, not being able to get visas to get in to help people and get aid into Sudan. And I wondered if there's anything your government is doing to try to alleviate that.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. First of all, let me thank all the international organizations, especially the UN organizations and agencies who support Sudan in this crisis. And also our thanks to the international NGOs who really actively try to do their best to support Sudan and to participate in finding solutions. But as you said, and also as Mamadou said, what we received in Sudan is less than we expect. Some percentage mentioned like 30% of the need, and in fact we discussed it was less than even 30%. The biggest problem now is in internally displaced people, and there are more than 8 million. And if you make a calculation, you can see the support, the real support, although it is a small one, which received by them is by the Sudanese community themselves. Socially, they receive from relatives, from what they know inside Sudan, around 75% of the current support. And only 20% comes from the outside. This is the official calculation, actually. If you have others, we are ready to listen to. For refugees, as mentioned by Nisreen, most or many of them, actually, they are not classified as refugees. They depend on themselves. They don't depend on any others. They receive money from their relatives from working abroad, supporting them. So they have, I saw them in Egypt. They have their own apartments rented by their own, their food, everything. They get nothing support, many of them. Of course, some of those who are registered as advised by the UNHCR, they can receive a lot. In general, what Sudanese are getting from the international community is less than expected, is less than 30% of the needs. And we encourage and we actually encourage those who are interested to support Sudan to do so. Yes, some of them complain there are some progresses hinder them for actually matching with the needs. And I discussed with many organizations here in Nairobi. Part of it is true. And when we discuss with Sudan, the committee who approves the visas, they feed us with information that not all the so-called humanitarian organizations are doing their mandate. Some of them with evidence, they have other purposes of going to Sudan, of collecting information for different issues, and not...
What about the large aid organizations? I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you know, the UN and other huge aid agencies that are saying that the bureaucracy is slowing down their efforts to get to these huge areas in Darfur, for example, where there are millions that are really suffering.
In fact, even those who have other agenda, my opinion is to be flexible, to support going in, and because there is institutions who are responsible to deal with other agenda. And this is our recommendation for our government. If you notice there is some people within some organizations doing something else than humanitarian, okay, be flexible at this time. And as far as we have strong institutions can know exactly what is doing and what they are doing. In general, the humanitarian should get the priority. And to save the people who need shelter, food, medicine is a priority. Those other agendas could be actually manageable. This is my opinion, and I do write to my government as to be flexible in those cases, even if there is evidence about it, to go forward to achieve and to support the people who need the humanitarian support. Definitely every institution do their target, and we cannot stop that, but we can manage that. And my advice to those who have difficulties to come directly to my office. Those who have problems of visa in Nairobi, most of the organizations are here, and we solved many problems, and we hundreds of them, they got visa from my office in Nairobi. So I encourage whoever they want to work in Sudan to support the Sudanese for humanitarian activities to come to us, and we are ready to cooperate. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Ambassador. Thank you very much indeed for those comments. Before we open it up, Ayla, is there anything you want to add in terms of what Mamadou said in terms of the responses and the programming that's going on?
I'll just take 60 seconds, and I want to echo some of the points made on community support. So when we're interviewing Sudanese and third country nationals who've been displaced by this conflict, and we ask them, where do you get information on safe locations? Where are you getting the funds to flee and to start up your lives in other countries? More than any other source, the number one thing that people are saying are from their own community, from family and friends, either in Sudan or abroad in the country that they're going to, or more broadly in the dispersed diaspora. So they're a key stakeholder here. This is something we all know, and yet they're not often recognized as a key stakeholder when we think about mobilizing responses. And so how can we do that better? I think it's important to point out that even if the conflict were to end tomorrow, we still have years of a displacement crisis ahead of us, because the level of devastation in the country means that many communities are not yet suitable for return, and many people will rightly feel like they're unwilling to return. And so we, as NGOs, but also UN agencies, as governments, have to think, how are we going to support Sudanese abroad? And we have to be prepared to think about this in the long term, irrespective of the political process.
And Ayla, can I?
Change would cause more migration, even if the war stopped.
Rebecca, can
Yes,
I
Mamadou,
have a
yes.
second?
Come back. There he is.
Okay. So just to say before we end, and I will second totally what Ayla just said about really as fast as possible this conflict needs to end, ceasefire, so that we can start seeing a bit more of rebuilding people's lives. Because as this is continuing, the impact of it is not only mixed movements, it's also instability in the region at the heart of Africa, towards the north, but also towards the south and towards the east and the west. So it's that risk that we have. But if I can just in a minute just say three quick thoughts, share them. The conditions of refugees in the neighboring countries is so essential, and education has been highlighted several times. This is a multifaceted response and quite central to the regional refugee response plan that we have. There were a few questions there. I think we can respond to them separately, because indeed, when the refugees go to countries, including in Sudan, going through the curriculum of the country hosting you is absolutely essential. But you have language barriers that we need to tackle as refugees go into these neighboring countries, but we can certainly respond to them in addition to the colleagues. Inside Sudan, over 250,000 of refugees have been displaced 2, 3, 4 times since the conflict has started. The numbers that Ambassador Kamal was referring to. So the refugees are, yes, inside Sudan, as impacted as the Sudanese themselves. And yes, the internally displaced Sudanese sisters and brothers, you go to Jazeera, you go to Madani, before Madani was taken, Kassala and White Nile, you see the level of destitution, as the same time the level of pride, because the Sudanese positively are not going to stay in IDP camps. They are being supported and sustained by the communities. So I just wanted to highlight this need, and again to say that we need comprehensive responses to mixed movement, not least through support to the people who have already been displaced, but also by ending this brutal conflict. Back to you.
Mamadou, thank you very much. I think your comments really focused the minds here, the collective minds, for the next couple of days. Clearly, we couldn't, get to everything in this session, but no worries, because there are many others to come the next couple of days, and we'll be taking questions throughout, and people can contribute. But thank you very much indeed for this session and for everybody's comments and participation. Thank you very much.